"Why is the bedroom door half closed?" I asked quietly, noticing the sudden silence inside, and instead of waiting for her to answer, I pushed it open wider myself, catching them mid-moment and ending everything before they could even step apart. "You're home early." Those 3 words hit differently when the person saying them looks more alarmed than happy. Not surprised, not relieved, alarmed. There's a version of that sentence that means warmth. A partner glancing up from the couch, eyes lighting up, maybe crossing the room to meet you halfway. This wasn't that version. This was Amber standing in the hallway with her arms crossed over her chest, weight shifted toward the bedroom door behind her, voice just slightly too controlled for a Tuesday afternoon. I remember noticing the stillness. The apartment had that specific kind of silence that only exists when something is being held back, like the air itself was waiting to see what I'd do next. I didn't do anything. Not yet. I set my keys on the counter the same way I always did, and I said, "Yeah, they let us out early." And I watched her, and she watched me, and for just a second, neither of us moved. I didn't know what I was about to find out, but some part of me, buried under 3 years of trust and inside jokes about trust, already did. Let me tell you what I had to lose before I tell you what I lost. Amber and I met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. She laughed at something I said before I even finished saying it. Not in a polite way, in a real way, the kind that makes you immediately want to say something funnier just to hear it again. We dated for 7 months before she moved into my apartment. We were together for 3 years total. I was 31. She was 29. We had a joint savings account with a number in it that I thought meant something. We had a drawer in the kitchen where we kept takeout menus from restaurants we'd been to together, which sounds small but isn't. We had inside jokes, recurring arguments, preferred sides of the bed, a shared opinion on which of her friends talked too much and which of my friends needed to grow up. We had plans, not vague someday plans. Actual, written down, talked about, partially budgeted plans. A trip to Portugal we'd been organizing for 6 months. A dog, name already picked, that we were going to adopt once we moved into a bigger place. A bigger place we'd already started looking at. That's what I had. That's what was sitting in the balance that Tuesday afternoon when I noticed the bedroom door was half closed. I didn't know it was in the balance yet. But the moment I looked at Amber's face, really looked, past the casual posture and the even voice, I felt something shift behind my ribs. A small, quiet shift. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind you remember later and think, that was the moment. I should tell you something about the weeks leading up to that day, because when I look back now, I can see things I couldn't see then or didn't let myself see. Amber had been distracted for about a month. Not dramatically distant, not cold or cruel, just slightly less there. Her attention had a delay on it. She'd ask me a question and then not quite register the answer. She'd laugh at her phone and turn the screen away before I could glance at it. Nothing sharp or defensive about it. Just a small, practiced rotation. I noticed it the way you notice a low-grade headache. Present enough to acknowledge. Not severe enough to treat. I told myself she was stressed about work. She was, technically. Her company had been through 2 rounds of restructuring in 4 months, and her team was down 3 people. That was real. That was verifiable. So I leaned on it. I used it as an explanation for everything I was noticing and chose not to investigate. Looking back, I gave that explanation a lot of work it wasn't equipped to handle. The morning of that Tuesday, nothing felt different. We ate breakfast together. She made coffee. I burned toast, which was not unusual. She told me she had a late meeting and might not be home until 7 or 8. I told her I'd probably be at the office until 6 and we'd figure out dinner when I got back. She kissed me before I left. Not a long kiss. A regular kiss. A Tuesday morning, half awake, "I'll see you tonight" kiss. I drove to work thinking about a quarterly report I had to finish and a call I had to take at noon. I thought about nothing unusual. I thought about nothing that would have predicted where that day ended up. The meeting wrapped at 2:30 instead of 5. My manager told us the client had moved the deadline up. We'd addressed everything early. Good work. Take the afternoon. I didn't text Amber. I almost did. Habit almost made me reach for my phone. But the parking lot was loud and I figured I'd just be home in 20 minutes anyway. I didn't realize it then. But that decision, 20 seconds of not texting, changed everything. The drive home was completely ordinary. Radio on. Traffic moderate. I stopped for gas because the light had been on for 2 days. I pulled into the complex, parked in my usual spot, took the stairs because the elevator was slow and I wasn't carrying anything. I unlocked the front door. And that's when it started. Not with a sound. Not with a sight. with a feeling. The apartment felt occupied in a way that was slightly off. Amber's shoes were by the door, which made sense. She said she'd be home late, but maybe the meeting ended early too. But there were 2 glasses on the kitchen counter, both used, one with a faint ring of what looked like whiskey. Amber didn't drink whiskey. I stopped. I looked at those 2 glasses for probably 3 full seconds. And then I looked at the hallway. And that's when I saw it. The bedroom door. Half closed. I want to be precise about what half closed means in our apartment. Our bedroom door was always open or always shut. That was just how it was, a habit, a pattern, one of those small domestic consistencies you develop without thinking about it. Open when we were awake and moving around. Shut when one of us was sleeping or getting dressed. Half closed was not a state that door occupied, ever. So when I saw it sitting at about a 60-degree angle, light coming from inside, a complete and total absence of sound, I felt that same shift behind my ribs I'd felt earlier. Bigger this time. Less quiet. I walked down the hallway slowly. I'm not sure why slowly. Maybe I already knew. Maybe slow was my body buying time for the part of me that still believed in the joint savings account and the dog we'd named already and the Portugal trip we'd half budgeted. I stopped just outside the door. And I said it quietly, not loudly, not aggressively, not even suspiciously, just quietly. Why is the bedroom door half closed? Silence. Not the kind of silence that means no one is there. The wrong kind. The kind of silence that means no one is ready. I heard the rustle of movement inside, fast and controlled. I heard the specific sound of something being adjusted. I heard the specific sound of a position being abandoned. And I pushed the door open. I want to be careful about how I describe what I saw, because I don't want the description to become the whole story. It doesn't deserve to be the whole story. What I'll say is this. Amber was in the room. Trevor was in the room. Trevor was a guy she'd introduced to me 8 months ago as a colleague. A colleague she mentioned occasionally. Trevor had a funny idea in the meeting. Trevor handled that account, actually. In the casual, unremarkable way you mention someone who exists only at the edges of your life. A colleague who, as it turned out, had graduated significantly past the edges. They were not in the middle of something when I pushed that door open. They were in the finished stages of something, which was, in its own way, worse. Because the guilt on their faces wasn't the panicked guilt of being caught in action. It was the slower, heavier guilt of knowing there was no version of this that could be walked back. No explanation that could reframe what the room looked like. No sentence that could start with "this isn't what it looks like" and have any chance of landing. We all knew that. All 3 of us knew it simultaneously. And we stood there in that knowledge for what felt like a very long time. Amber said my name. Not his. Mine. She said it the way you say someone's name when you're about to explain something that cannot be explained. When you're reaching for words, and the only thing your mouth can find is the name of the person you've already hurt. I didn't say anything back. Trevor moved toward the door. Past me. I stepped to the side to let him through because I didn't want to touch him, and I didn't want to speak to him, and I didn't want him anywhere near me long enough to require either. I heard the front door open and close. I looked at Amber. She looked at me. How long? I said. She didn't answer immediately, which was, in itself, an answer. How long, Amber? Not a question anymore. A requirement. She looked at the floor. For months, she said. For months. I did the math automatically. I couldn't stop myself. For months meant it started in November. November was when I planned her birthday, the restaurant I booked 3 weeks in advance, the gift I'd spent 2 weekends finding, the card I wrote and rewrote until it sounded like how I actually felt and not like a greeting card. November was when we had the conversation about the Portugal trip. She had sat across from me at our kitchen table with her laptop open and said, "I think we should actually do this, like actually book it." And I had felt this surge of, I don't even know what to call it. Certainty maybe. The feeling of being in the right place. For months meant that conversation happened while this was also happening. That birthday happened while this was also happening. Christmas happened while this was also happening. I had driven 4 hours each way to spend 3 days with her family at Christmas. I had sat at her mother's table and talked about the year ahead, while this was already happening. Why? I said. She had moved to sit on the edge of the bed and I noticed, with a kind of distant clarity, that I did not want to be in that room anymore. Can we go to the living room? I said. It wasn't a question. She stood up. We went to the living room. I stood by the window. She sat on the couch. There was enough space between us that it felt appropriate. Why? I said again. What followed was one of those conversations that doesn't feel like a conversation. It feels like being briefed on something that has already happened to you. like getting a report on your own life. She talked. I listened. Or I heard. I'm not sure I was listening in any real sense. She said things that I recognized as things people say in these moments. She said she hadn't planned it. She said it started slowly. She didn't realize what it was until it already was. She said she'd been meaning to end it. She said she knew this was not an excuse. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't know how to tell me. She said she had wanted to tell me. She said she knew none of this was okay. I listened to all of it. And what I felt, standing there by the window, was not rage. It wasn't what I expected. I had imagined, not that I'd planned for this, but in the abstract, drifting way you imagine things you don't want to imagine, that if I were ever in this situation, I would be loud, that I would say things, that something in me would break outward. But standing there, I felt something much quieter, a kind of flat, gray clarity, the way a room looks when all the warm light goes out. Were you ever going to tell me? I said. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything. She looked at me. I don't know, she said. And I respected that more than any of the other things she'd said, because it was honest, because it meant, possibly no. Possibly I would have let this go on and told myself I was protecting you and protecting what we had, and really I was protecting myself from having to watch your face do what it's doing right now. Okay, I said. I walked to the bedroom. I got my overnight bag from the top shelf of the closet. I packed what I needed for a few days. Clothes, chargers, the things you can function with when you're not ready to think beyond the next 72 hours. I came back out. Amber was still on the couch. She was watching me. You're leaving tonight? She said. Yes, I said. Can we? She started. Not tonight, I said. Okay, she said quietly. I picked up my keys. I looked at her once more from the doorway. I said nothing. I left. I drove to my friend Cole's apartment. Cole and I had been close since college. The kind of close that means you can show up without much explanation and he'll hand you a beer and not ask more than you want to answer. He opened the door, read my face, and said, "Guest room's made up." That was it. That was the whole exchange. I sat in his kitchen for a while. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. I just sat there with a beer I wasn't drinking, replaying the look on Amber's face when I pushed that door open. Not the guilt. Not the apology. The half second before those things. The moment when she saw me and understood what was about to change. There was something in her eyes in that moment that I kept coming back to. Something that looked almost like relief. Like she had been carrying something very heavy for a long time and had finally, involuntarily, been allowed to put it down. I sat with that thought for a long time. Cole came in around midnight and refilled my glass without asking. How bad, he said. Bad, I said. He nodded. We didn't talk about it further that night. I stayed at Cole's for 4 days. I went to work. I answered emails. I attended a meeting about a project I couldn't have described to you 10 minutes after it ended. I ate because I remembered to. I slept because my body eventually forced it. I did not contact Amber and she did not contact me, which was either courtesy or cowardice from both directions, and I didn't try to figure out which. On the 5th day, Cole said, "You need to go back and get the rest of your stuff." Not should you. Not what are you thinking. Just, you need to. I know, I said. You need to talk to her, he said. I know, I said. You also need to stop drinking the expensive whiskey, he said. That one I'm less convinced about, I said. He looked at me for a second. Good, he said. That means you're almost through it. I went back on Saturday morning. I texted her first, coming to get some things. I'll be there at 10. She responded, okay, I'll be here. I drove over with empty boxes. Practical, visible, a clear statement of intent that didn't require a speech. She was in the kitchen when I came in. She looked like she hadn't slept more than I had. She had made coffee, which was either instinct or an offering or both. I took a cup, not because I wanted to soften anything, just because I wanted the coffee. We sat at the kitchen table. Same table where she'd said I think we should actually book it. Same table where we'd argued about things that, in retrospect, were very small. Same table where we'd eaten 1,000 ordinary breakfasts. I need to understand something, I said. She waited. Was it just him? I said. Yes, she said immediately. And is it over? She paused. I ended it the night you left, she said. I believed her. Not because I was naive. Because she had no reason to lie at this point, and she knew it. I need to ask you something harder, I said. She looked at me. Were you unhappy with me? I said. Not us. Me. She was quiet for a moment. And what she said next was the thing I've replayed the most since. She said, I wasn't unhappy with you. I was unhappy with myself. She said it carefully, like she'd thought about the exact shape of the sentence for a while. "I've been unhappy with myself for a long time," she said. "And being with someone who's good to me and stable, and you see me, you always saw me. And somehow that made it worse instead of better." She paused. "I don't know how to explain that in a way that makes sense," she said. "It probably doesn't make sense from the outside." I didn't say anything. "I think I wanted to feel something disruptive," she said. "Something that didn't require me to be accountable to anyone. And I made a terrible choice trying to find that. And I have no excuse. I needed you to know it wasn't about you being wrong for me. It was about me being wrong in a way I should have dealt with differently." I sat with that. I turned my coffee cup in my hands. "That's actually harder to hear," I said. "I know," she said. "Why?" I said. "Because it means I can't be angry at something specific about you." "Exactly," she said quietly. "It means the problem was something I had no ability to fix." "Right," she said. We looked at each other across the table. 3 years. A joint savings account. A dog with a name. A trip half booked. "I'm not going to be able to stay," I said. "I know," she said. "Not now and probably not. I don't know when." "I know," she said again. "Are you going to be okay?" I said. And I meant it. Despite everything. I'm in it completely. She looked at me and her eyes went wet and she said, "I don't deserve that question." "I know," I said. "But I'm asking anyway." I moved out over 2 weekends. There wasn't a dramatic single departure. There was just a gradual reduction. Boxes carried out, spaces on shelves that had once held my books, the second toothbrush gone from the bathroom cup, my half of the closet going from full to empty to a row of unused hangers. The practical business of dismantling a shared life is surreal in a way that's hard to describe. You put a relationship in boxes. You carry it to your car. You drive it to wherever you're going next. And somehow that migration of objects is supposed to map to something emotional, but it doesn't quite. The feeling doesn't fit into boxes. The feeling goes somewhere else. Cole helped me move. He drove the second trip. On the way back from the second trip, he said, "You doing okay?" "Not really," I said. "Yeah," he said. "That's the right answer. I want to tell you about Trevor because I think he deserves a mention. Not because he deserves anything from me, but because understanding who he was matters to understanding what happened." 3 days after I moved out, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "This is Trevor. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I just want to say I'm sorry. That's all. You don't have to respond." I stared at that message for a long time. I thought about all the things I could say back. There were several. Some of them were accurate. Some of them were the kind of thing you say to feel something instead of nothing. I typed one of them out. Then I deleted it. Then I typed another. Then I deleted that one too. What I sent, eventually, was this. Noted. 2 letters. 6 characters. I put my phone down and didn't think about him again. The Portugal trip. I need to tell you about the Portugal trip. Because I almost went anyway. Not with her. Alone. I had the dates blocked off. I had done a significant amount of research. Restaurants. Routes. Those small specific hotels that cost more than chains but feel like someone's home. 3 weeks after I moved out, I was sitting in my new apartment. Temporary, furnished, a place to land. Looking at the itinerary I'd saved on my laptop and thinking about whether I should cancel the whole thing or modify it. I almost clicked cancel. And then I thought about the reason I'd wanted to go in the first place. Not the reason that had gotten layered over it. Not the romantic trip, not the couple milestone. The original reason, before any of that. I wanted to see it since I was 19, and someone showed me a photograph of the Douro Valley. That one was older than Amber. That one had nothing to do with what happened in the bedroom. I went. Alone. I took the trip I had planned for 2, and I took it by myself, and it was one of the strangest and most unexpectedly good things I've ever done. I ate at a table for 1 overlooking the river on the 3rd night, and I thought about the version of this trip I had imagined. The version with her across the table, her laughing at something I said before I finished saying it, and I let myself feel sad about that version for a few minutes. And then I looked at the river, and I ate my dinner, and I ordered dessert. I'm going to tell you about a conversation I had with my brother about 2 months after everything happened. His name is Greg. He's 4 years older than me. He's been married for 8 years and has 2 kids and lives in a house in a suburb 3 hours away from where I am. He called to check in, the way he does, infrequently but reliably, and I ended up telling him the whole story. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I was done, there was a pause. And then he said, "Can I tell you something you're not going to want to hear?" "Sure," I said. "You already knew," he said. I didn't say anything. Not specifically, he said. Not about him. Not about the 4 months. But some part of you knew something was wrong, and you decided not to look at it. I wanted to argue with him. I wanted to say that wasn't fair, that I had no way of knowing, that I trusted her. Why are you telling me this? I said instead. Because, he said, if you spend the next year being 100% the victim of what she did, which you were, I'm not saying you weren't, you're going to miss the part that you can learn from. Which part is that? I said. You saw the signs, he said. You chose the explanation that hurt less. That's not a character flaw. That's just being human. But you should know you're capable of it. So you don't do it again. I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. He wasn't wrong. I had noticed things. The screen rotation. The slight delay in her attention. The month of low-grade distance that I attributed entirely to work stress. I had chosen the softer explanation every single time. Not because I was stupid. Not because the signs were invisible. But because the true explanation required me to act on it. And acting on it meant risking what I had. And I wasn't ready to risk what I had. And then what I had got taken anyway. Greg's point was not you should have ended it sooner. His point was, you taught yourself that not looking was safe. Don't keep teaching yourself that. 6 months after I moved out, I ran into Amber. Not a planned encounter. A grocery store. She was in the produce section. I was heading toward it from the other side. We saw each other at the same moment. There was a half second where I think we both assessed whether a graceful retreat was possible. It wasn't. We walked toward each other. She looked well. Rested, maybe. A different kind of tired than the last time I'd seen her. Hi, she said. Hi, I said. We stood there for a moment with the mild chaos of a Saturday grocery store moving around us. How are you? She said. Good, I said. And I meant it mostly. Good, she said. And she seemed to mean it. Not as relief, but as something more complicated than that. Like she'd been hoping I'd say it and wasn't sure how she felt about it being true. You? I said. Getting there, she said. She paused. I started therapy, she said. That's good, I said. It is, she said. It's yeah. She stopped. I've been wanting to tell you something, she said. You don't have to, I said. I know, she said. But I want to. I waited. I think I was afraid of being as happy as I was with you, she said. I think I found a way to destroy it before something else could. And I think I've been doing that my whole life, and I finally actually talked to someone about it. She said it simply. No bid for sympathy. No angling for reconciliation. Just a fact she needed to say out loud to the person she'd hurt with it. Thank you for telling me, I said. And I meant that too. We stood in the produce aisle for another few seconds. Take care of yourself, I said. You too, she said. I walked to the other end of the store. I finished my shopping. I drove home. And something that had been sitting at an angle inside me for 6 months settled, quietly, into a slightly more bearable position. I want to go back to that Tuesday afternoon. To the moment right before I pushed the door open. I've thought about it more times than I can count. Not obsessively. Just the way you think about a hinge point. A specific second where the trajectory of something changes and everything after it is different from everything before. I was standing in the hallway. I'd asked a question. The silence was giving me its answer. And I had a choice, in that moment. Almost no time to make it, but technically a choice. I could have walked away from the door. I could have gone to the kitchen. I could have pretended I didn't hear what that silence was saying. I could have waited for her to come out. I could have given her an exit. I could have protected myself, in the way I'd been protecting myself for a month, from the true explanation. I pushed the door open instead. And I think about why. I think the reason I pushed it open is that I was done. Not done with her necessarily. I didn't know what I was done with yet. But done with the softer explanation. Done with noticing things and choosing not to look at them. Done with the low-grade headache I'd been living with for a month. The one I kept diagnosing as something manageable. I pushed that door open because somewhere in the hallway, in the 3 seconds between my question and the silence that answered it, I understood that what was on the other side of it was already the truth. And the truth, even a truth that cost me everything I thought I was going home to, was better than standing in the hallway forever. Here's what I want you to know about the year that followed. It was not easy. I'm not going to tell you I came out the other side wiser and whole and grateful, because that's not how it felt from inside it. From inside it, it felt like learning to walk differently. Like you've had a habit of walking a certain way your whole life, and now that way doesn't work, and you have to figure out a new way, and you know intellectually that you will, but for a while every step feels effortful and slightly wrong. I moved into a real apartment. Not furnished. Mine. I bought furniture I picked out myself, which sounds small but isn't. I went back to Portugal, actually, or I tried to. I got as far as booking the flights before I ended up using those funds on a couch I liked more than any couch I'd ever owned. I ran into Qley at least once a week, sometimes more. I made some new friends, which is harder at 31 than people admit. I had a few dates. Nothing that went anywhere significant, which was probably the right pace. I thought about Amber sometimes, not with bitterness, mostly, with a kind of clear-eyed sadness that's different from grief. Grief says I want this back. What I had was more like, I understand why this happened, and I'm sorry it did, and I hope you figure out the thing you needed to figure out. That's not the same as forgiveness in the cinematic sense. It's more like letting something become the past. Fully, genuinely, actually the past. Not a current event you're managing. Just something that happened. Something that changed you in ways that were mostly worth being changed. I'll tell you the thing Greg said to me when I called him at the end of that year. I called him around the anniversary of that Tuesday. Not deliberately. It was just a coincidence of timing. I told him I was okay. I told him about the apartment and the couch and the dates that hadn't gone anywhere and the way things were starting to feel more like my life and less like a stage set I was waiting to leave. He listened. He said, "You sound different." Different how? I said. Less like someone who's waiting for permission to feel okay, he said. I thought about that. Yeah, I said. I think I stopped waiting. Good, he said. He asked if I was still thinking about Portugal. I told him the couch took the Portugal money. Worth it, he said. Genuinely excellent couch, I said. He laughed. The last thing I want to tell you is about the morning after I pushed that door open. I was at Qley's. I woke up before he did. I made coffee. I sat by his kitchen window. His apartment faces east, and the morning light comes in at an angle that makes everything look slower than it is. I sat there with my coffee, and I looked at the light. And I thought about the joint savings account with the number in it that I thought meant something. And I thought about the drawer full of takeout menus. And I thought about the dog we'd named, but never adopted. And I thought about Portugal. And I thought about the exact way her laugh sounded the night we met. That real laugh. The one I wanted to earn again immediately. I sat there, and I let all of that be gone. Not violently. Not with effort. Just gone. Like water finding its level. Things are what they are. What was is what was. What's here now is what's here now. I finished my coffee. I showered. I went to work. And somewhere between Qley's kitchen and the office parking lot, I noticed that the low-grade headache I'd been carrying for months, the one I'd been misdiagnosing for weeks, was finally, quietly, entirely gone. Not because anything was fixed. Not because I had answers. Not because the loss had turned into something else. But because at least now I knew what I was actually dealing with. And that, the truth, even the hard truth, even the truth that cost me everything I thought I was going home to on a Tuesday afternoon, felt, in its own strange way, like something I could build from. I stood in that hallway for 3 seconds before I pushed the door open. Some doors, once you see what's on the other side, you can never close again. But some of them, the ones you should have opened long before you did, you stop wishing you'd left shut.